profile cases. So why don't we bring, if she's ready to be brought in, why don't we bring Jill in?
Let's bring her in, even if she's not ready. Maybe it'll be more fun if she's not ready. Oh, there is she ready? She looks ready.
I'm trying to add this this thing to my, I don't even know how to sign up, this yard thing, whatever. Anyway, don't worry about it.
this yard thing. Oh, look at this.
There's
that's bossy, right? Is that bossy?
It's bossy. We have a surprise for you, Missy. Where's our
boss? Oh, there you go.
We have a bossy.
Oh my God, are you kidding me? Whose dog? Is that yours, Linda?
Yeah,
that's yours.
That's yours.
Oh, that's mine.
That's bossy. Mine is this one. Mine's 2B. If we have 2B, there's 2B. That's 2B, the standard poodle.
Well, don't leave out the Domino then. Come on.
Then there's Domino is Michael's. He's coming up too.
There you go.
We are a dog-friendly show. Okay.
Beautiful.
So Jill,
before wait, you got to get the important things before Jill introduces herself. Let Jill introduce Bossy's Instagram, and then Jill can introduce.
Oh, wow.
She has about 5,000 followers.
Nice.
And they're all real. I don't say that. It's Bossy Zarin, BOSSIZARIN.
There you go. Nice. Follow Bossy Zarin.
Jill, nice to meet you. We've never met.
No, we have not.
We appreciate you joining us here. This is the clashing of two worlds, the world of entertainment and true crime, and sometimes there is a major crossover. Why don't you tell us why you're so invested in this case? What is it about it?
Well, I think I had heard about it late in the game. I'm late to this party, late. So I watched the documentary, I'd say about 3 weeks ago, and I was hooked in terms of the case and the fascination. And I've got, as Linda, I've got my notes.
You got your notes? Oh, good. I'm so glad. And you're ready to be my co-counsel in the case of my paralegal?
So my sister is an attorney and a judge in Westport, Connecticut. And she has a daily talk show in Connecticut. And my dad is a lawyer, never practiced. Never practiced a day. And my boyfriend, he also has a lawyer MBA degree, but he never practiced a day of law. But I like to think we're kind of an intellectual family, and we talk a lot about different things. And I have a lot of opinions, and I sometimes find things that nobody else sees.
All right, we're putting you in the middle of Michael and I.
There you go. I feel better now. Although Linda, you and I are on opposite sides now. Can we fix that? There we go. There we go. Now I feel better. Okay.
Well, I'm gonna split you two up. Perfect.
You said nothing would come between us, Jill, and look what happened.
I'm here to shake it up.
I have tell everybody about yourself before that.
Yeah.
Before you get on, I want you to tell and promote your causes that you're involved with.
Oh, thank you. So my name is Jill Zarin. And I was the original housewife from the Real Housewives of New York City, which I actually have in my office behind me. Woo! One of the OGs. And, since then I've done some other TV projects, but I'm an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur. And right now I have a rug company, and I make rugs, outdoor, indoor rugs, pet proof.
Oh, wow.
Pet proof. And she does every day, and I clean it up every day. And I also have a bedding line, and I have a candle line. So I'm working.
Wow.
I work my tail off, and I do TV shows. I just did a game show last week in LA. And
which one?
What's the cause? We always like to ask people what the cause is that they want people to donate to.
I'm sorry?
We always like to ask people, what's your cause that you want people to look at to possibly donate to? We know you're involved in charities and all sorts of stuff. You have.
And I mean, personally, I have my Bobby Zarin Memorial Trust, because I raise money for that every summer. I have a big charity event. If you're in the Hamptons, July 26th. It's my 12th one. And it's a giant gifting suite, and gift away over $1 million worth of products to everybody who comes. It's an incredible event, and you get all this free shit. If I can say that word.
You can say that. Yeah.
I can say that word. And it's really, really fun. I raise money for my husband who passed away. He did end up dying. He succumbed to cancer. But, I still raise money for thyroid cancer. I do.
It's not great that your husband passed away, but the fact that you do that type of work is so important, and are still involved with it. It's so very important.
Of course, I'm Jewish, and I'm very involved in the Jewish community, and trying to do what I can.
Yeah. You and Neil Rockhind, another one of our guests who also has co-hosted with us. He was on the other night, also very involved and all. And his son actually passed away from cancer, so he's also very involved in both your cause. I wish Neil could. We asked Neil to join us this afternoon, but unfortunately he couldn't, because he actually has a law practice. So
I got involved in. I started TikToking. about the Karen Reed trial, and I guess I found an audience, and they started listening. It was crazy. I think I had 150,000 on my first one, which I thought was a lot. I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So, and so I've done it a few times, and then you guys reached out to me, and I was so excited. I said yes right away. I say yes to everything. I mean, it's a good way to live.
Yeah, we're a young channel, but we come with a lot of experience. So mine is the high-profile cases, and Michael's the Emmy award-winning attorney.
That's
so,
it.
You know,
that's all I got. Oh, all right.
That's pretty damn good.
You know what? I'll tell you something. You came in very handy today because I don't like nothing. No shame. I don't like court TV the way their format is. I don't like that. I don't know when they're live. Sometimes they say they're live. Sometimes they don't say they're live. Sometimes they're live like by 5 minutes. I mean, it's crazy. And there's too much stuff on the screen. So and it distracted me. I'm listening and then I'm like watching and it's just too much for me. And this morning, they're cutting out to commercials. Hello, we're in a live. This is live, baby. We've got 90 minutes to watch of each side, and I'm with bated breath. And then it's like, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to cut to a commercial. Now I get the commercial, but then it's, I'm sorry, we're gonna cut out and listen to people's opinions during the closing statements. Are you kidding? You guys were great. You didn't.
We just shut the hell up. That's what we do.
And then you've got plenty of time to talk about it after. Give them the 90 minutes each. And then I guess it's my dad's 96th birthday today.
Oh, my
congratulations.
Congratulations.
For lunch on the beach. So I had to run out and do that. So I did not listen to the judges'
instructions.
Instructions, which by the way are critical.
Crucial.
The outcome of a case many times.
Yeah, crucial. And this verdict sheet that we're talking about. Did you know about the controversy from the first trial? What they call it a slip, the verdict slip, what they give to the jury to fill out to say guilty and not guilty. Do you know about that? Because that's what apparently the jury had decided that Karen Reed was not guilty on 2 counts, and they were hung on 1 count, but no one ever asked. So. We're in a second trial, and the Supreme Judicial Court ruled that's your remedy. You get a second trial. So today she sends this verdict sheet in with all these. She charged all these charges that the prosecutor didn't even want. The parties all agreed they didn't want these lesser includes. She charged them anyhow. So now there's 3 charges under the second count, and she's got a verdict sheet that has 7 options to possibly find Karen Reed guilty. Or 7 options, 6 to find her guilty, and only 1 to find her not guilty.
Well, you know what that says? That's called bias.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's called judicial bias. And I heard that she's retiring after this. Is that true?
I think she's going to the Supreme. She wants to go to the Supreme Judicial Court. My understanding is that she wants to go to an upper court.
Closet and throw away the key.
Yeah.
She's sitting on the bench. She's done. Yeah. I'll tell you when she was done for me. And like I said, I came in late in the game. And I saw it happen live, but then I saw everybody picked up on it in the news. When she looked at, what's his name, Henry or Hank? When she looked at Hank, when somebody was testifying and she goes like this, and he's like, I object. She goes, sustained, come on, let's go, let's talk. She wanted to interrupt that line of questioning. And thank God for cameras. Otherwise, nobody would believe it. That alone is grounds for an appeal. I mean, there's so many grounds for an appeal that if they find her guilty, unfortunately she'll end up in jail for that period of time. But there's like 5 how many times did he try to get a mistrial? 3?
They probably filed more motions. Or they probably filed an omnibus motion because I don't think that was all. But that whole what did you see the stunt about the shirt about taking John O'Keefe's shirt? Tell us what you thought.
I have questions about the shirt. Absolutely absolutely misconduct on him. And I don't know what the remedy is when the prosecutor deliberately tries to mislead the jury. There's got to be some consequences. Is there any legal consequence?
No, there was none. She just like had this jury charge. She was going to say you to draw no inference from it at one point. She was going to tell the jury that. And then the fact that,
these are all grounds, by the way, these are all grounds for I don't think that the jury, especially because she was going to correct it and tell them that the shirt did not have holes in it. And I don't think they're a stupid jury. But that would have been grounds for a new trial, for sure.
Yeah,
it's pretty bad. Hey, let me just say, in case I'm gone on mute most of the time because I have the lawn being mowed behind me now. It is unbelievable. So I'm not being rude, but I'm going to mute except when I have something amazing to say. So I'm listening.
We got you. I just want to talk about the shirt for 1 minute. I have a question for you. So the shirt has no holes in it, yet there are marks on his arm. The prosecutor says the marks are coming from the glass, the plastic from the car. How does the plastic from the car get through the shirt to scratch an arm where blood is clearly seen, or a scab or some kind of thing is seen? Show me that magic trick, Hank. Tell me.
Really? Yeah, no, that's exactly right. You're absolutely right. Not only there's only there's six holes in the shirt, and yet there's what, 32 marks on his arm?
Are there holes in the shirt or no? I thought there were no holes.
No, there's six punctate wounds. There's
actually 9, but who's counting?
Is it 9? Okay,
there are
I had
9,
6 in my notes.
and there are 36 holes in the arm. So
okay, that's what
I'm no math major, but it does work out to 4 times 9.
There holes on both arms?
No, just the one, just the right arm that had the injury.
That bothers me a little bit. Why are there holes on one side of his shirt? Well, it could be from the bite marks of a dog.
Exactly.
But I didn't understand how it got through the shirt when there were no holes. So there were no holes on the back of the shirt.
Right. There's no holes in the back of the shirt indicating he was dragged or fell on the shirt or anything. And what Hank Brennan was trying to do, he was suggesting to Dr. Rentschler that this was a road rash, right? That the holes were caused by road rash, that he was dragged a little bit on the road when he fell backwards. And that was wrong. I mean, I think that was total misconduct. I think that was grounds for mistrial. I mean, that had to be purposeful. You can't tell me that Hank Brennan represented Whitey Bulger for 8 years and had this case, and he didn't know that those holes were created by the criminalist that he was intending to call on rebuttal, Maureen Hartnett.
So I have another question for you, and I'm the common sense jurist, right? Because I'm not a lawyer and I don't have the benefit of having all these other cases that you both have in your life that you have a lot to bring in, that you don't even realize you're bringing in. I have nothing. So the car, why did they okay, I have a couple questions. Why did they recreate the accident, alleged accident, in like literally, how did it was a 3-point turn allegedly. So she hit the gas, can you literally go 24 miles an hour from where the car started to where his body was?
Impossible.
So I don't know why didn't they bring in an expert of just inertia? Like, you cannot hit the gas hard enough, fast enough to go from here to here and set 24 miles an hour.
I got the impression, and again, it wasn't from the Commonwealth because their experts did nothing but paint their arms, but even the defense experts made it sound like that wasn't a disputed issue, that you could, if you depress the accelerator 74%, that you could hit that 24 miles an hour in that short distance. So I think it became a bigger question as to could you physically do that? Because have you ever driven backwards, Jill? Have you ever driven backwards at some speed?
I've driven backwards, and you know what I do when I drive backwards? At night, at night in a snowstorm, I go very slowly.
Well, you heard the prosecution.
There was any intent anyway. I mean, if you believe it could have been an accident, no.
You heard the prosecution suggest that she was so mad. That's why she did it. She intentionally stepped on the gas, put it in reverse, and aimed at John O'Keefe because she was so mad. How does that whole argument resonate with you? You're used to storylines in which people are angry at one another and venting and, tossing tables. And, so how does this track with you? All of the text we heard, leading up to the event, was there enough there to suggest she wanted to hurt or kill John O'Keefe?
Absolutely not. But let's talk about common sense. So he gets out of the car. Most people do not walk right behind a car. It's kind of unsafe. But if I were getting out of the car, I guess she pulled up. Is she saying she pulled up on the side of the house? And she couldn't pull in the driveway because there were cars in the driveway because there were people in the house. So did she pull up and drop him off? Where did she drop him off? See, I don't know those facts. And does anyone know? Because that's very important.
That's kind of the problem, right?
Very important. So she pulled up in front of the house and she's on the outside. He's on the grass side. He gets out and walks to the house. He's not standing there, right? He gets out, he's walking to the house, and she's not mad at him because she's waiting for him, which I'm going to get to a question. If she's coming from the other direction, and she lets him out on the right side, he wouldn't walk behind the car. He would walk where the light is, in front of the car, so she could see him and run him over that way, if you know what I mean. Joking. He would walk to the front and cross in front of her. Doesn't make sense that he would go behind her. Just common sense. And she certainly didn't pull up on the grass and drop him off. So which side of the car did he get out on? And I'd like to know that question. I have another question is, I heard today that they only found one shoe. So what does Hank say the other shoe is?
It was found supposedly several days later on the berm, okay? It wasn't at the same time. It was supposed, but that could have easily happened when the EMT's picking up. Hank Brennan was saying, well, he was hit and, he was hit out of his shoes or something like that. That was the argument. We didn't quite hear that.
No, but then his bones would be broken. You have to have
Right. You're right. You're about to have broken bones.
You got to push somebody over to get out of their shoe.
Yeah. That's what maybe Carrie Sipley loves you. For those of you, oh my goodness, that's an excellent point. She wouldn't be waiting for him if she were pissed at him. Very good. There you go. All right.
I have a robo vacuum that cleans my house 24/7. It's crazy.
That's okay. That's it. Lawndered Amber. She pulled up in front of the house. He wouldn't have to go behind the car. Or just get out and walk across the yard to the door.
So how did he get behind her?
We don't know. No one. That's what the prosecution said. We don't know how this accident occurred. That's what they've said. They don't know how it occurred. How can they prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt?
I needed to speak to the defense. I have another question for you. You ready?
Hmm?
So Hank says today in his closing statement that he's arguing that they were actually friendly in the restaurant, if I understood him right. He said that they're hugging and they're friendly in the restaurant and everything was good in the restaurant. So tell me why Karen says and admits that she wasn't invited in the house. I don't understand what happened. Explain to me. So my understanding is that she pulled up to the house. He was getting out to find out if she was invited, because I got this from the documentary, that she wasn't like invited. Now, if you're out with friends at a bar, and by the way, nothing good happens after midnight, at a bar, and these are cops, it's 12:20 or whatever, and they invite you back to the house. What, they didn't invite both of them? I don't understand that. Why would she even be sitting in the car waiting for him to go in and ask permission that she could come in, and she was waiting in the car and he never came back to tell her?
The inference, I think, was because it was that Higgins wanted to see him. You come in here, and so he was going in. She didn't know why exactly he was going in, but then she left him. I mean, she left him in the car.
She sent him in to get permission to bring her in, and he was supposed to come out and tell her to come in, right, Michael?
Well, that is just one of the many uncertainties in this scenario. Did they have a fight in the car and so she was dropping him and she was never going to go in? Is that possible?
Watch the documentary. No, I think she said, and she wasn't mad about it. She said he was going in to find out if I could come, and he was supposed to come right out and tell me. And if I couldn't come, I would go home.
Well, I mean, I think that's odd. I think that's odd.
Kate said that they were getting along great in the bar. So why would there be an issue with her going in the house?
Yeah, and we know their relationship was volatile and kind of falling apart. I get all of that, and it's the end of a night. They've all been drinking. Maybe she's interested in an Irish exit. Yeah, we'll come and see you, but she doesn't really want to. She's going home, and maybe they just had a little dispute about who was going to stay and who wasn't. My point is that who cares? We don't know because we don't know what happened. And that's just one of the little nuggets.
Is another thing. So this is what I also said today, which a lot of people kind of agreed with me, which was, my opinion is, my opinion is she has to be found not guilty because they don't have enough evidence to prove her guilty.
That's our opinion too.
I'm not 100% sure she didn't hit him accidentally. I'm not 100% sure she didn't. I think there's proof that you could probably go either way, and that's why you can't find her guilty. But I personally think that a lot of the evidence that bothers people, which has to do with the guy who owns the house, and what bothered me the most in this whole case was the fact that he had a dog a lot bigger than her. When anybody comes within 4 feet of my front door, this dog goes wild. Could you imagine his dog? He is a guard dog. If you have a Doberman, what does he have? A German Shepherd?
A German Shepherd or a German Shepherd and Malinois mix, which may even make it worse because
German Shepherds are guard dogs. That's what they had in Nazi concentration camps. German Shepherds. That's
I
what
had shepherds, right? That's what I had to have them trained because they're innate. They protect. They don't necessarily bite, but they protect, right?
That dog was not sleeping. So now he says he's sleeping. What was the dog doing? The dog was barking. That I can tell you. I know the dog was barking. Nobody sleeps to a barking dog who's right. Like my dog barks when nobody's there. Can you imagine how she barks when someone's at the doorbell? That dog was out of his mind with all the lights and all the noise and all the people.
Okay.
And
How
I'm
about this?
What I think. I think I know why.
Alternative argument, Jill.
What?
The alternative argument. The dog was not there anymore because of what happened earlier in the evening. So they had already shipped that dog out with one of the kids who left earlier in the evening. That's why there was no barking.
Do we know who the kid is, and did the kid ever testify?
Which one was it? Was it Caitlin? I can't
I think
remember.
it was Caitlin. I think that was the argument on the first trial.
Yeah, somebody that left earlier than
somebody left at 2:00 and they shipped the dog out. That was the argument.
Yeah, that's why the dog never made a sound.
Because in the first trial, when Brian Albert testified, he said he let the dog out to do his business.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So it was clear the dog was there earlier in the evening. And then all of a sudden the dog was on. First of all, who gets rid of their dog, their household dog, after 7 years? No one. No one. Who gets rid of it? And then rehomes it. So they send Buchanan up to try to get samples of the teeth, putting it under a different name, like it's in the witness effing protection program, right? You know, the dog. And the dog, by the way,
he never gave who he gave the dog to, right? He never said he sold the dog to.
Yeah.
Why not?
And
Vermont. Somewhere's in Vermont.
Well, what was his reason? What was his reason for not giving the name when he was on the stand?
The Buchanan didn't have a name. Didn't have a name for the dog. He was going, go check this. Here's paperwork. Go check this out. I don't think he ever saw the dog.
I think something nefarious, having nothing to do with Karen Reed or John, was going on in that house, and that's why they wouldn't open that door. I think I've heard that the son was into drugs. I heard that John was on the drug task force or something to do with it, and that if he let him in, something went down about drugs. And if he didn't let him in, let's say she did accidentally hit him, he didn't let them in because if they came in, then he would have to let them see the house and let them, then they would start to be like, well, we have to decide whether he was here or not. And now we have to get fingerprints. And I think if they did a drug search, the parents, whether they knew or not, might have been protecting their son, thinking, we're not letting them in. They're going to search the house and find drugs. And then the phone calls were all about hiding, protecting the son. So they had to get rid of all, this is my opinion, potential opinion, that maybe they were calling their friends or whoever to, get rid of this, make sure my son doesn't this, and all those recordings and all those telephone calls between each other would have been in evidence, and they would have to explain what the hell was going on. And I think that they got rid of all that because they were protecting their boy.
But what caused it? See, the problem I have with the prosecution is that all the medical people testified that his body was not consistent with the hit, and the other medical people testified that you had animal wounds or dog bites, and the prosecution never rebutted it. They didn't bring anybody out to rebut it.
The thing about the dog bites is when you see his skin, and I'm not a coroner, so I can't tell you what's supposed to happen.
Well, if you were in this court and you were a coroner, she wouldn't let you testify.
No, but the scratches look like they're a day or two old, if you know what I mean. They don't look like they're fresh wounds. And if they were fresh wounds, where's the blood on the sweatshirt on the inside?
Well, there wasn't. Apparently, the skin itself wasn't. Wasn't punctured enough for the blood to come out. That's what the medical examiner said. They were abrasions, but not enough for the blood to come out. So that's where you had. Now I don't know. I haven't talked to my husband about that. So
both of them said that. That doesn't.
Yeah, they all said that. Yeah.
Only if it's dried blood. I say those scratches might have been made a day before, because you know what? My dog has scratched me, and microscopically there'd be a little bit of blood. And if I had a shirt on and you put it under a microscope, pretty sure you'd see blood. You might not see it with your eye, but when you make it, some of those were scratches. Like if you pull that, I don't know if you have a shot of it that you can pull up, but you pull it up, there's some like wide scratches that would definitely bring up blood, and they looked a little scabbed, Linda.
And well, that's why it's hard to see with the, it's a two-dimensional photo, so it looks like, like claw marks.
Well, but that was fresh claw. If you've ever been scratched, a fresh claw looks different than the day after, and that looked like a day after, and it takes hours for your body to make scab. Hours. So it didn't look fresh because he died, right? So he died, so there's no blood pumping. So they should.
So what do you think? What do you think happened? He had an 85% clogging of his coronary artery, his LAD, his widowmaker. Do you think he just had he got punched and had a little to do with a Higgy and got punched and he dropped dead because of the stress of that? And then, you know, they said, oh my God, what do we do now? What do you think happened? We're spitballing here because we don't know what happened. See, the problem is I had this case. We don't know what happened.
She knows what happens. And that's why this is a fascinating case, because the whole world is looking in that courtroom and we all know there's one person who knows the truth. And it's her, because she knows if she did it or not. She knows. And if she didn't do it, then we have a lot of, you know, what it could have been.
Well, if she didn't do it, then I don't know that she knows what happened either, because she left.
Right.
So,
but I think it could be drugs. I think that something's going on with the son and the cover up. What do parents do? They cover for their children, especially if you're a cop. You know, it could ruin his whole life if this kid gets caught with drugs in the house.
Yeah. John was assigned, I think, to the sex task force in Boston. They gave him a desk job after he did the guardianship of the kids. So that's where, instead of being out in the street, so he could have, you know, he was raising the children of his sister. So I think they put him on the sex crimes unit or whatever they would call it in Boston. I'm not exactly sure, but he was. I don't think he was. But who knows whether he knew about drugs and all? Who knows what? We don't know anything. That's the problem.
Wait. You know this? You ready? And I know it's not valid in a court of law in a trial. I know that, but we're talking about the court of public opinion. Did anybody get a lie detector test?
We don't know.
No, we don't know. And yeah. Don't know, and I don't see any upside to doing that. It's not admissible, so who cares?
Okay,
and then
I'll tell you the upside. The upside, if she did it, and if she took it, and she passed, and she put it out there, that's huge. I don't care if you can admit it in court. It would mean something to you, because we know they're mostly right. You have to be really good at that. You know, you really have to know what you're doing to fool a lie detector test. And what was she, a teacher? I mean, she's not in law enforcement. I don't think she's that gifted that she could control her body, whatever. And if she failed it, they hide it, right? If she failed it, you don't show it.
Interesting point that you're saying public opinion, you would do that. And of course, when you're picking the lie detector person, if you're picking the person, you know, it's not really the test. When the cops give you a lie detector test, they don't care about the test. They're caring about the pre-interview, because they try to get people to confess in the pre-interview test. So, but in defense, you're picking anybody, I guess. So,
right.
You know,
so you can say,
I see what you're saying. You're saying the court of public opinion, put it out there.
Right. If it said not guilty, then someone like you, an expert in the business, would say, well, you know, I don't really trust it because they picked the person who did it and blah, blah, blah. And that's fine. And that's true.
Right.
But if she passed it, I'd still mean something to us.
Interesting in terms of the court of public opinion, right?
3 years after that first trial, she didn't do a lie detector test. And if she did, she failed it. Otherwise, we would know it.
Interesting.
I guess that's possible. I can't believe
the
they were kept quiet. It's possible.
Yeah.
I guess.
The glare says, I can
Glare
beat any lie detector. Lie detector test. Ask me something. Yeah.
I believe Will is correct.
But we
Will.
had a case when I was a prosecutor of a man who actually set up his wife and killed her. And he actually passed the lie detector test. You know, he knew what to do. He passed the lie detector test. See, us lawyers who do this for a living, that's why we don't bother with them, because we know that they're, you know, BS.
There's just no upside. It's just
the upside is public opinion. It's an upside. Absolutely.
Yeah, but then you end up maybe poisoning the jury pool that you're hoping to get a fair jury from. I don't know.
It can only help the jury pool for you, because if they think that you had a not guilty lie.
Yeah, so Linda, the other Linda Jill is spot on. She loves you, and then
Linda, I love you too.
Patriot.
You do.
Patriotic.
Oh my God, you're gonna make me.
Yeah, let me show that again.
Yeah, let me see that again. I didn't quite read through that.
I'm sorry. And then I'm gonna go patriotic. It's so nice to see Jill on here with her beautiful palm. I loved her Chihuahua Ginger and her wonderful husband Bobby. We still have her book co-authored by her mom.
Thank you. That was really nice. Thank you, Linda. Oh, patriotic. Thank you. I love you.
Patriotic. Yeah, Linda and Patriotic, big fans of yours, Jill. I mean, really big fans, and Patriotic, a member here. So let's see if I can get Let me see if I can get a screenshot of those so we can send those to you. Hold on one second. I can see if I can get a screenshot.
If I can get a light. See if I can get one of these things. COVID light. So I used to call them.
Yeah. Now we also have, Linda has a couple other things she wants you to know about. She thinks that the verdict won't be long. Okay.
And it is now, just for those counting, it's about an hour 45 right now.
Tell me about
you must stay until we get a verdict. Okay. Well, I'm staying. I don't know if Jill can stay till we get a verdict, but I'm staying, you know.
Something's going to happen at 5. And that would be, she'll check in, see how they're doing, which is something I suggested was
Have you ever had a judge as bad or worse as bad? Actually, initially I said that we all expected the judges to be against us, but I think she may be one of the worst I've seen, next to who was it? Judge Glanville in the YSL case. He was pretty bad.
Yeah, she's definitely bad, and she's exposed to everybody in her, badness.
Why did she allow cameras?
Why did she what?
Why did she allow cameras? Could she have said no? Could she have said
no? No, she did. No, it's hard to say no with cameras. It really is. You really can't these days. Unless you're in New York, which doesn't have the rule, or the Supreme Court. You know.
But we can't see P. Diddy.
Well,
no, it's federal
court, right?
Yeah, never cameras in federal court,
right?
And we're not seeing Weinstein, who's in state court, who's now convicted, because New York
doesn't have cameras. Yeah.
That's why.
Once you allow them, it's hard to not allow them.
New York has no official rule about no cameras.
Could the
defendant
no
judge has the guts to say yes?
Could the defendant have said, "I don't want a camera on me"?
That's been tried, and that does work out.
Mary Vallow was successful with that.
Yeah, but I've never been. All my clients, I've always been sitting next to them, and I always had the camera full time. The judge would say, "No, we're going to have a camera," unless the judge has only one camera. See, like in Koberger, the judge is going to use only their YouTube camera, right, Michael?
No, their Zoom in-house system. Yeah,
which is brutal.
All these like non-famous trials that are going on are filmed, and you can watch them on TV online.
No, they're not filmed because people don't make applications to come in and watch the courtroom. That's the thing. So they have to make an application. Somebody has to make an application to come in, and then it has to be granted or not granted. I think in Georgia was called a Rule 22 application on the YSL. So you make an application because or else they want to waste resources. Just like today, you didn't see, you saw it's expensive to do. Some of the courts have their own in-house Zoom, but others do not, and they don't run trials. Some of them do run proceedings though, that you could see. It varies from state to state, but generally no one's interested.
Karen, I'll tell you why. There was nothing she could do right or wrong. You're looking at every expression. I mean, I'm an expression person, right? I'm like I would be hemming and hawing. Half the time I'm trying to fall asleep. They're waking me up. I mean, it was so dry, some of the material. And I really, really objected to Hank when he got aggressive to these witnesses. These witnesses, they get paid a salary. They get paid some money to come, but they don't get paid to be abused.
No, it's tough duty. I see the fan. And I see the note that Sue from inside the courtroom says they're waiting for the O'Keefe family. Everybody else is in court. So we don't know what that means.
Sounds like they're going to send the jury home
or something.
Or there's a question, or she asked, "Do you want to go home?" And also something is happening. Yeah, we call it the fan of injustice right now, because until the jury comes back and does the right thing. Or not. Yeah, Hank was really aggressive, wasn't he? How would you like to be a witness and be treated like that?
That's what I'm saying. You know what? Thank God it was the man that he was doing it to. Well, actually, there were two. So the one, what did they call him? I told you I had done this TikTok, and people were commenting. I had a lot of comments, and there was one thing that they called. It was the cute guy who was the reconstructionist for the defense.
Wolf, Dr. Wolf.
Dr. Wolf.
No, but they had a nickname for him.
Oh.
Crash Daddy.
Crash Daddy.
Crash Daddy. Because I was talking about him. I'm like, who's Crash Daddy? I mean, he is hot, right? He was so cute. But
Did you see the woman fell over in front of the courthouse?
Fell for him.
Oh my God. She tripped over the wire. I died. You see, I got the best part of the trial, even though I haven't been in.
It's not a verdict, by the way. Aiden Carney, it's not a verdict. They're not sure what it's for, but it's not a verdict. It's not a verdict.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It would be irresponsible, I hate to say it, to give a verdict that fast. Because there's 7, you said there's 7 choices. and they really want to come out and feel like they did the right job.
Yeah.
You know, and I think guilty is easier in the sense, you know.
Well, let's find out.
Well, we're going to about find out any second.
It's been a long day for us. We appreciate everything you've done today. I do have to tell you those same cautions. Please do not discuss this case
let
with
him go
anyone.
home.
Don't do
You're
any
gonna wrap it.
independent
Are they
research
coming
or
tomorrow?
investigation into the case. If you happen to see, hear, or read anything about the case, please disregard it and let us know. Do not talk to anyone, and that includes each other. So when you walk out the deliberation door, you have to stop talking about this case. Even when you come into the courtroom, don't mutter anything to each other, certainly not on the
That's impossible.
side or anything like that. So
I've been a juror.
it's very important that you remember that. And you cannot, even if you get here before on
Did
this
we
case,
lose
there are
her?
the alternates as well. So we really appreciate that. Watch your social media use and the papers and the news. Stay away from all of that if you can this weekend. We'll see you Monday morning, ready to start fresh.
Monday.
Okay.
Tomorrow. They should be working on the weekend.
No, Judge Bev does not work on the weekend. Sorry.
Well, you know what? There are juries who do go through until they have a verdict. Saturday.
That is true. We've seen it
We've
happen.
seen that. We've seen that, right? We've
So
seen
I
that.
could leave you ladies and go see if there's anything to
Yeah,
see
go ahead.
outside
We'll
of
talk.
court.
We'll
Let me
talk.
do
Let's see
that.
if you even get an interview.
You guys talk amongst yourselves.
Ask
Okay.
ask Alan if he looked at any of any of my stuff.
See if they're still gagged. It's all about you, Linda. Come on.
I just want to know.
I'll check back in.
Jill,
Jill, if I don't get back before you disappear, it's so nice to meet you. Thank you
Nice
for
to meet
coming
you.
on. We
Hopefully you'll invite
appreciate
me
it.
back for another case.
Of course. Take care.
My
Bye.
next
Okay.
assignment.
So I want to know what are the questions you have, because obviously people are loving your questions and loving your questions, because you're like a jury, you're like a person, jury person.
I'm the fresh face. I only came in like in the last few weeks. And
Yeah. What did you think of the closings? What did you think of the closings? Tell me what you thought of each of the closings.
I thought the defense was and I heard you speak about it after, and I agree 100% with everything you said. I thought that he was phenomenal. I think you said, Linda, he was the best you've ever heard.
I bet best closing I've ever heard given, and I've heard a lot of closings. Best one I've ever heard given. Yeah.
You have a great show. So, and by the way, I want to tell you something else that's great. While I'm watching, I'm speaking to you. I've got my TV on, and while you tuned into the court where you heard Judge Bev give that instruction, which I think is important for people to know when they're coming back. Court TV, they didn't have it. They had some guy talking. They should have interrupted and shut him up and put him back in the courtroom. They don't have a good producer. So,
there's this whole movement now to have this delay and to talk. I think people want to hear it as it's going on.
I need to know when it's happening.
Yeah, that's why you're watching. That's why I think YouTube is the streaming is where it's going to go. We tried to get a
first time. Listen to you.
We have press credentials. We have press credentials for Center Street, for Atlanta, and we're small. We just started like 6-8 months ago, and Massachusetts doesn't recognize any YouTube streamers if that's all they have as media. What are we talking about?
They will. They
have to.
By the way, on another news, you want to hear this news? I mean, it's another unrelated to the case. Did you know that In Touch, Life and Style, and the other one are closing at the end of June? They're closing forever.
No, the magazines.
I found out today. A friend of mine is an editor, and he wrote me.
I didn't know that. No, but they
all these years they let me go today, and it's my last. And they're closing the magazines. So sad, Linda.
It's sad.
When I was on television 100 years ago, all I wanted to do was see my picture in the thing. All I wanted, I'd buy them every week, and I'd be at the grocery or whatever, and I'm like, "Mommy, look, picture me." I mean, it was like the most exciting thing. And then, leave it to social media to ruin that for every celebrity, right? Now we're not special anymore because everyone's a celebrity and everyone's got Instagram, and influencers are bigger than celebrities and all that. But it's kind of sad. It's the death of an era, just like newspapers.
Forget newspapers. Forget newspapers. They're gone. They're gone. And the whole idea of like, my husband said to me this morning, the Air India crash, that'll be off the headlines by today. And sure enough, it's like, okay, Air India, that happened a year ago. Everything is fast. The shelf life of story is like an hour.
It's too fast. By the way, is my coloring weird? I feel like I have a weird coloring. Am I weird? Should I get rid of that light?
No, the light's good. Matter of fact, anything you need more light. You need more light.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
more light on your face.
What I see and what you see is different, right? You know that.
Okay. Yeah. I know that. Yeah. That's better. That gives you more light. Yeah. More light on your face.
I need feedback.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that, everybody.
No, that's okay. That's so. What was the high point of Alan Jackson's closing to you? Because I'm going to ask you the same thing about Brennan.
I agree with everything. Like I said, where he opened up with 3 words: not guilty, not guilty. No. He said
collision.
Because he was explaining to the jury that this case is all about her hitting him or not hitting him. So if you believe she didn't touch him, if the car didn't touch him, then there's nothing, we're not talking about anything else. That's all we're talking about. Did she hit him or did she not hit him? So if you don't think she hit him because there's not enough physical evidence to prove it, which there isn't. I mean,
there isn't. There's not enough. Whether you think she did it or not, he borrowed. It's interesting. Alan borrowed from really the California charges, which Johnny Cochran, if you go back and look at his closing in the O.J. Simpson case, talked about it. You may think they did it. It may be possible they did it. It could be probable they did it. Most likely they did it. But it's proof beyond a reasonable doubt. He borrowed from that California charge, which he's used to because that's where he practices, in California.
And I heard he's doing this pro bono the second time. Is that true?
That's what he says. And very well could be. I mean, he's certainly gotten a lot of publicity.
It's a lot about how he feels about his client, because I don't know too many lawyers who go pro bono, even if they did lose the first trial.
Yeah, no, I've done a lot of pro bono work because you believe your client's innocent. Even some of the older cases you look at, some of the lawyers who got paid then try to go to the public defenders because they still run an office. So it's kind of hard to, if you're going to be in a 6 or 8 month trial, to eat or support your staff. Unless you're getting some kind of compensation.
A hotel, and he's got to say she's staying in a hotel. How is she affording this?
I can't talk about that, but I did a lot of it pro bono. I really did. I did a lot of it.
I'm talking Karen Reed. How did she afford this? Is she from money? Does she have?
No, she's got a fund. Apparently, a fund that's that people donate to. She's raised a lot of money. She's got fundraisers and she's raised an awful lot of money. We have not done that because we felt that by running a fundraiser that tipped us over the side of when we wanted to say, well, we believe that it's not guilty. We want people to understand this because we believe it's not guilty, not because we're fundraising for it. Charlie, thank you so much for that donation. Appreciate it. Michael Bryan can get a coffee. Poor Michael Bryan got up at 5 o'clock in the morning and drove from Connecticut. So you said your father was a judge in Connecticut, or your brother?
My sister is a sitting judge, a probate judge. My sister's a probate. Lisa Wexler, and she's a probate judge in Westport, Connecticut.
Okay. For people that don't know, probate is when you're dealing with an estate of a deceased, somebody who's died and all. Just so you know, and
all judges have their thing, and there's things that you like about your job and you don't like your job. What my sister does is so heart-wrenching almost every day, and you don't realize this, and I'm sure you know this because you're a lawyer, or maybe you don't. Most of her time is spent in hospitals, committing people or not committing them. But there's emergency hearings every day by somebody in the area who's in need of, mental health help, and she has to commit them or not commit them, and that's probably the hardest thing she has to tell people they can't go home.
That's beyond.
And, people fight over money. A lot of estates, crazy. I told her she needs a talk show. You're not a talk show, like a judge show. They have all these.
Right. Because people don't understand. People don't understand that probate judges see all this. Plus, a lot of times you have families fighting with each other too, right?
Housewives, you have no idea. Right. These people fight. Oh my God! And then you have, heartbreaking things. Name changes are always sometimes a nice thing, and sometimes adoptions and taking kids away, and really heart wrenching.
Yeah. You see, we have everyone on here just loves you. So the high point you think was the collision, not guilty.
Take you through. I thought that he was able to take you through the story and give you a lot of common sense. Because throughout the trial, there are moments, like I said, that I just wanted to fall asleep. And I got very angry at the prosecutor, mostly. Sometimes he would be, what's his name, Alan? Sometimes he would be a little aggressive. But Hank has no personality. So when he's aggressive, he's just mean. I could be aggressive.
Can I stop you? That's a great observation. When he's aggressive, he's mean. That's a great, because there was no, it went from 1 to 10. There was nothing in between, right?
be aggressive, but I have a personality, and I like to say I have softness. So like, I actually just had a fight right now, if you want to know the truth.
Oh, be careful, because somebody's going to accuse you of murder if you have a fight. That's.
I just had a fight with the restaurant and the manager of the restaurant. I told him to call the police. So my girlfriend came from my father's birthday. He's 97.
That's
97,
great.
God bless, and in great health. I mean,
That's great.
great health.
God bless him. Knock on wood.
My mother, she's great, but not as great. My father's unbelievable. So we go to this restaurant. I won't even name it because I'm pissed. On the beach in Delray, and it's like a motel hotel with a beautiful like outside, not a fancy restaurant though, and an indoor outdoor. So the table they originally give us is like a booth that you put 8 people on the inside. It's ridiculous. The restaurant's empty. They have this nice round table by the window looking at the ocean. So we ask if we can sit there. We do. My one of my assistants, she came with her dog because the dog had been alone all day. Whatever. She's got and I asked her for the papers. She has a legal service animal. And I saw those papers, and I know the difference between service animal and emotional support. And she travels on it, whatever. And she has the papers. And they say to her, she can't, and she had them in a stroller, a baby stroller, not even on the floor. And they say that this woman says to her, she can't sit there at this round table in the corner because there's carpeting there, but she could sit over by the bar area that we wouldn't have a view of the ocean because it has wood there, that no one's allowed to sit there with the animal. And I get up, of course, my mouth, and I go and speak to the manager. Well, it didn't work. I go to speak to the manager, and he says to me, I'm sorry, you can't sit there because it's a rule, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, you have to allow service animals in the restaurant. You know that. And he says, we don't have to anymore.
Yes, I do. What is he talking about?
Hold on, don't worry. He's going to get a letter from the state. I'm already, And I should have ChatGPT'd it right then and there. But he says to me, and I said, no, you absolutely have to. He goes, no, they changed it. I don't have to. I said, you know what? Do me a favor. And now I start to raise my voice, Linda. I said, do me a favor. Call the police. And he was like, ugh. I'm like, call the police. Do me a favor, because I don't want. And then he kind of scared me a little, like he was going to ask me to leave. He's like, well, I can ask you to, but he didn't say leave. He said to sit over there or whatever. And then I'm like, my 96-year-old father, my mother, what am I going to do to them? Make them now have to go an hour for another restaurant? Shut up. Like, shut up. So I'm like, okay. And we move tables with the dog and my parents who are 100, and the restaurant's fucking empty. So I look it up at the table on ChatGPT, and not only does it say they have to allow service animals anywhere humans are allowed, so that if the human's allowed for the carpet, so is the service animal, which
Absolutely.
I knew, because the
Absolutely.
service animal provides a service to a human if it's a seeing eye dog or has to be diabetic or whatever it is. Now, it doesn't matter if there's carpet or not. Oh, I also said to him, do you allow children in the restaurant? He says, yes. I said, do you allow strollers in the restaurant? He said, yes. I said, well, this baby dog is in a stroller. I don't understand the difference. If the dog is in a stroller here versus in a stroller there. You know what? The guy was a fucking moron. And, but when I'm yelling, I'm still funny. I have a personality. I'm like, I'm yelling at you, but you're still laughing because I'm hysterical. The difference is Hank, not so funny. So when he's mad, he's mean.
Yeah, he was mean, right? Wasn't he? Yeah, I did a rant, like, to me with the women, like, do you have a problem with your memory? To Dr. Russell, and to the medical examiner, do you have a problem with your memory? Like, women you have a problem with your memory? I was like really pissed.
Linda, you have no idea. I would be so fucking, and the judge would be yelling at me because I would be like, don't talk to me like that.
Yeah, you'd say, but you can't. I mean,
scripted things that I would say to this lawyer, like, I don't need to be here right now and be abused by you. I could go home and be abused by Gary.
Right. I mean, I just, how about this? How about I'm getting off on the closings, but how about the ham sandwich? Okay. What I wanted to say when he asked Dr. Welcher, he said, well, did you go have a ham sandwich with the defense team? He said, yes, I'm waiting for the car.
But I would have said, I'm kosher. I don't appreciate it.
That's great. I think that's great. I would have followed up if I were the defense. Here would be my mouth. Excuse me, doctor, was it with mayonnaise What kind of mayonnaise? Was it Hellman's? Was it Duke's? Was it Kewpie? Or did it have mustard? Did it have raw? I mean, it was so ridiculous.
So let's talk about this as a legal, as an attorney, right? You're a defense attorney now, but you were a prosecutor. So
yeah. And somebody asked, what's the fastest I ever had a jury come in? I had a jury come in for a murder verdict, finding somebody guilty of murder in 45 minutes. That's my fastest jury ever.
And it took 45 minutes. In other words, it's not, you still have to fill out the paperwork, people.
Right.
First of all, you're all going to sit down, and sometimes, I think you talked about this, most of the time, and I've been a juror, by the way.
You have been? Oh, because we have I think our jury consultant is going to come to join you at 5 p.m. Yes, Richard Gabriel, who is like my jury consultant inspector and was a jury consultant at RHONY with Michelle. He's joining us because I said you're going to be on, so he's going to join us. You're going to be able to ask him questions.
I have questions for him. So I was on, and I'll talk about it when he's on, but I was a juror on a rape carjacking.
A rape carjacking. Oh my God. Oh my. Why don't you need PTSD from that? That is.
It was, and you know what? It was in Fort Tyrone Park. For anybody who doesn't know, that's north of Harlem and north of Washington Heights. It's like past the GW Bridge north. Right? That's Fort Tyrone Park. And it's like Central Park for where they live. It's a beautiful park, I've heard, and has views of the Hudson. And if you and it was a lover's lane, and there was a couple making out, and these 4 African-American men got up on the car and carjacked the car, and she was raped.
Oh my God. Oh, the poor woman.
All you know as a juror, right, is you have one of the boys on trial, and because they don't tell you everything until after, which they don't always do. First of all, I had a great judge, which makes such a difference, because as a juror, if you have a great judge, you want to please him. Like, you want to do the right thing by him. Because you want him
or her, and that's the part I told everybody here, that the jurors get attached to their judges. You got to be careful.
Very much attached to him, and he was like the god, for the 2 or 3 days that we were deliberating. But I will tell you what I loved about my judge. When we were over and we gave our verdict, which I'll tell you, and I'll tell you how we found our verdict, how we found the answer. He came in afterwards and he says, "I just want to tell you that you guys were right on the law. You did the right thing." So what happened was, he was charged with the carjacking and the rape. And at the end of it, we didn't believe he did the rape. We didn't believe he could prove that he did the rape. She was raped for sure, but we just weren't sure it was him or one of the others. And we didn't know what happened to the others. We found out afterwards that they all pled. And the reason why this boy didn't plea is because he wrote a confession, and he wanted it thrown out because he said it was a forced confession. So that's why he was on trial. Otherwise, he would have pled out. But we didn't know about the plea. We didn't know where the 3 boys were. So when we were in the jury room and we're trying to decide, is this boy guilty or not guilty, we're all reading this confession. And one of the jurors, and I would like to take credit, it wasn't me, there was a correction on it. Like, let's say he crossed it out and it said black, and he crossed it out and he wrote blue, okay? So I'm just using that as what he did. I don't remember what the words were, but he had some corrections, and then he signed his name, okay? So this is what someone said, if you were forced into a confession, would you correct it? That was it.
So that you could.
He knew that if he corrected the confession, then it was a confession. If it was a coerced confession, you would sign it.
Just sign it no matter what, because you think the cops are right. Yeah.
Also, what he corrected was irrelevant. Like, we didn't correct where he admitted or didn't admit. It was something innocuous, like black or blue.
Yeah.
It was something technical or whatever. And that's why we found him guilty. So when the judge came back and he says, you guys were right, he absolutely did it.
Oh, that's interesting.
But now I can tell you he did it. I know he did it, and you got it right. And yes, you shouldn't have found him guilty on the rape because you couldn't prove that.
But that's afterwards. So when you were in the trial, did the judge give you any hint?
I want to ask you, Linda, do judges do that? He said no. He said he says most of the time you won't hear this from a judge. Is that true? Does the judge
most of the time the judge will bring you in when there's a conviction. They'll tell the jury, you got the right job. Most of the time they'll talk to the jury afterwards. Okay.
Oh, they do.
Yeah, they do. They generally do in a serious case like that, because they want the jurors to understand. They want them to go home and be able to sleep at night when you have that kind of serious crime. I'm a run-of-the-mill thing, a burglary, and I say that I don't say that lightly. But, I'm not talking about where somebody's going to go to jail from 25 to life. They don't do it because they don't care. But on that, where they know that the jurors are very, very concerned about whether they got it right, because I'm sure you were, right? You did your work.
Which is why I feel like,
validation.
Well, that's why I feel like I'm in the jury of Karen. Like, I understand the gravity. And that's why I said you're not going to get a quick verdict, because every single person there, if they're going to convict, they've got to make sure they convict rightfully in their mind and they can sleep at night. And also, if you're going to say not guilty, you want to make sure you're not making a mistake and letting someone guilty go.
Right. It's important to you. What if you convict? You don't want to be responsible. I can't imagine being responsible for a wrongful conviction. I don't know how.
Some people have to come to terms with themselves. And like, I have a very quick brain. You have a quick brain. That's why you do what you do. I do it. Some people are slower. It takes them a minute. They have to digest it. So I think, and so this is what I was going to say, and I think you had said this for those who were listening. So one of two things will happen, and because I was in a jury room, you'll take a straw vote right away. Because sometimes it's obvious in a case someone's guilty or not. And it doesn't have to be a murder. I'm just saying sometimes it's obvious. Like, we know the guy did it. And then everyone's like, he did it, and we're done. Sometimes it's, if it's no, I still think you have to go through it to make sure you're not letting a guilty guy go. So no matter what, I think that they're going to do a straw. If they do a straw, not everyone's going to say they want to give an answer yet. I don't think everyone's going to give an answer. And I think they're going to have to go through some of it, maybe not all of it. And I don't think you'll have a verdict for like at least a day. So today, I think Monday, maybe Tuesday.
Yeah, that's it's interesting because most of the people, I think most of the people in our poll vote today, I said Monday. I said late Monday because I think they're going to think about it over the weekend. And that jury sheet is so hard. Last time they were 4 days. Last time they went out on Tuesday, and after they had the 2 hung, remember they came back and they said, well, you Brewer and Fowler. They came back on like 2 days later and said they were hung, and she gave them what's called this dynamite Allen charge, which says, well, go back in there and try again. And then they came back and said they were hung, and that took 4 days. That was 4 days.
Well, let me ask you a question. With the hung, was it the same number both times?
Or we don't know. We don't know because the judge didn't inquire. That was a problem. We didn't inquire. The judge didn't inquire whether or not the judge didn't inquire whether they were hung on one charge or all. And it turns out
they hung on 1 juror or 5 jurors.
We don't know. They didn't ask. The judge didn't ask the question. They never asked the question.
Afterwards, didn't the jurists come out and say, "Listen, this asshole"?
There's been 2 stories. Some of the jurors said we all acquitted on 1 and 3. That was an agreement. And then other jurors said it was 6-5. Someone said it was there was 6-5, and one undecided. One said it was 10-3 or 10-2. One said it was 9-3. So who the heck knows?
You're telling me that 12 people couldn't come out with the same answer of how they?
Yeah, no, apparently not.
I mean, that's a problem.
And the problem maybe is because you had all these. You have these sub things here. You know, it's not just count 2. It's these sub charges. It's the lesser included. So maybe they were screwed up on who was for 1 lesser included or who was against all the lesser included. That if you read this you have to read this. Missy will send it to you. This sheet, this verdict sheet. It is so confusing.
You show it to the people listening to the show. Can you put it up on your screen?
Yeah, we have it up a little bit. We can put it back up. Can we stick it back up even with we have to even take me out and put it up, the verdict sheet on here?
You know, it's not the Oscars, but it would be interesting for us to print it out and fill it out and see how we all do.
Okay, so let's see if we can go to it. And then if Richard comes on, we'll bring Richard in to talk about the jury. Can we get a little larger, or we may have to go a little smaller on our side. So let's go through this.
Oh, this is great. I love this. Okay, verdict slip.
That's what they call it in Massachusetts. Everybody else calls it a verdict form. You know, from being on a jury.
I don't know because I wasn't the foreman, so I didn't have to do it.
Order
while operating a vehicle under the. Well, first of all, can we talk about the first thing? Under the influence of liquor. She didn't have a sobriety test at the accident, or whatever. How could you prove anybody's drunk?
Yeah, they did. So they took her blood like 8 hours later, and then tried to do what's called a retrograde extrapolation. But it was garbage because they took this
for drunk driving. Linda, does that hold up for drunk driving? That test?
In some states it can, but not with like in New Jersey. You would need a double test. You wouldn't just need 1 test because you have to show whether the person's going up in drinking or down in drinking. You have to show whether the blood's going up. But they did it wrong here because they took serum versus whole blood, and there was all issues with this. So I don't think it would convict her.
Just on that first thing, you're telling me if she was in a car accident unrelated to a murder, in a car accident with the test that they gave her, would they be able to use that against her or no?
They could use it against her, but it depends on whether or not the serum, the defense challenge of validity. It depends on whether it was the serum or the whole blood, and whether or not they accounted for the fact that she has what disease that she had, which it changes how the blood gets taken from your system. That wasn't multiple sclerosis. What does she have?
To me, it's a problem in itself that you can't find her guilty of anything having to do with
It's an issue. It's an issue. The blood test itself is an issue. Okay.
So not guilty of the offense, whatever. Guilty of the offense is charged manslaughter while operating a motor vehicle under the influence. Again, with the under the influence. Is there one without being under the influence? Manslaughter while operating under the influence, and or manslaughter while operating a motor vehicle with the blood alcohol. Okay, so what's the difference? Can you explain the difference between a 0.08 and greater and under the influence of liquor?
It's different penalties. So they're just saying one is under the influence. No matter what you were drinking, you were under the influence, as opposed to you were legally drunk under the influence of 0.08. One's legally drunk and one is just, it's affecting you.
And what would be a sentence for that?
I don't remember, but it was pretty big, right, Michael? Michael Bryan is getting on the thing. He says 1 minute. Okay. I don't remember. I'm going to have to look it up, Joe. I don't remember.
I like to know the difference in things, because I watched this. I'll tell you something else that bothered me, Linda. When I watched the documentary and they arrested her, and the police went to arrest her the first time, and then they came back and arrested her again, very violently. They didn't have to do that. I mean, I watched the documentary and there was video of second-degree murder. And, second-degree murder is like, second-degree murder is murder. Manslaughter is different. There's manslaughter for all different reasons, meaning someone died.
Right.
Not meaning to die, but they died. But
right, exactly. All different reasons. Just like here, by the way, the prosecution didn't want any of these. They just wanted the top manslaughter. They didn't want all the rest of the
The fact that the prosecutor in the beginning, carrying on till now, even had second-degree murder on the sheet, to me makes him a piece of shit. Because never, ever, ever did anyone think that she intentionally, first-degree murder means she woke up in the morning, knew she wanted to kill him, planned it all out, and did it, right? That's first degree.
Here's your verdict slip for that. Murder in the second degree. And Massachusetts has this weird thing that if you do a conduct intentionally that could kill somebody, that's murder. Because first degree is usually the killing of a cop.
He talked about this. Hank said this. He talked about the intending act.
Right, the intending act. You had to have an intending act. It doesn't necessarily mean that you had a motive to kill, but you knew that if you were you intended to back up into him, knowing that would likely kill him.
So then I would challenge Hank, the genius, and say to him, well, you can't have it both ways, sweetheart. You can't say she's a drunk and can't stand up and is wasted, and then say also, but she had the thought of mind to know that if she went forward, she'd do this, and if she went backward, she would kill him. What is it?
Yeah.
If she's wasted drunk, I don't think she could even do that.
I don't think she could drive the car even when she wasn't drunk. I mean, with regards 20 in a straight line to hit somebody, in the snow.
Sound mind, making a sound decision, and at the same time be accused of being an alcoholic, being drunk and killing someone. So to me, you can't have it both ways. And I didn't like that. I didn't like this second degree, because I always thought that was overreaching. And instead of the truth being, if anything, she hit him and left the scene of a crime and then came back later. Like she hit him accidentally, left, and then she realized, oh shit, to me, common sense is, and again, the physical proof doesn't match it, and she has to be found guilty because it's not perfectly wrapped up in a bow. But I do see a scenario where she felt she hit him, maybe, but left because she was pissed. But then when she couldn't get him on the phone, she started to panic and go, oh my God, maybe I really did hit him. And that's why she called her girlfriend, because she didn't want to go back alone and see a dead body, and went back alone, and then absolutely freaked out and possibly said, oh my God, did I hit him?
Do you think if the prosecutor had not gone for the second degree murder, they would have had a better chance to convict on the manslaughter?
You bet. Because if I'm a jurist, I'm telling you, I don't like second degree murder. I don't like when you overreach. Don't charge for that second degree. You made a mistake. You did it then. And that was because of the whole blue, right? The whole Massachusetts with the police and, the wall of blue and was their homeboy, and they wanted to make sure, you know. But then there's all these things like that make me crazy that I can't, like I said, wrap it up in a bow. Like when the bad guy who they fired, right? The what was his name? The guy who they fired.
You mean Proctor, who got fired? Michael Proctor?
Yeah.
Yeah, the one who called her a whack job and said she has a leaky balloon and she basically goes doo-doo in her pants.
That's enough for me as a jurist to find her not guilty.
Right, me too. I mean, it's outrageous how and that's, he didn't even have an autopsy report, Jill. He had no cause of death when he was doing all this stuff.
His negligence is enough for not guilty.
Okay, let me jump in here. Let me jump in here if I can, if you don't mind. First of all, thanks to Jersey Girl for the cold drink fund, because I'm running out. So obviously I got back and they were just leaving the courthouse there. I was able to ask Mr. Alessi, as I did Mr. Yannetti. I said, "Are you guys still gagged?" And he went like, I said, "Does that make sense to you?" And he was like, like he couldn't answer, but he answered. And so for whatever reason, they are following apparently the court's direction not to talk. So yeah. I also, and I'll put this up when I get done here with you guys. I also talked to somebody who'd just flown in from Minneapolis, was here hoping there was going to be a verdict today. Now she's all concerned because she has a flight out Monday afternoon and she might miss the verdict. But, you know, these people see this, you know, and Jill, you could relate to this. It's like a TV show for them, right? So they come out here and they want to go to the set. You know, the courthouse, oh, it seems much smaller than it did on TV. And then they go to this place and they go to that place. And it's taken on that kind of mystique for some people that it is, they're fascinated by it. They don't like what's happening. I've never found anybody that is here cheering on the Commonwealth. I'm sorry. I've been looking. It just doesn't happen. But those that are here to support Karen Read and the defense, it's overwhelming. And I'm just collecting how many states I'm hearing from people. Add Wisconsin to the mix.
Wisconsin. By the way, Missy, we have Richard yet? Because Jill wants to ask Richard Gabriel some questions here. You know, by the way, did you hear anything from Michael when you were out there about the jury? Did the judge ask if the jury wanted to go home? Is that how this happened?
Yeah, you know? Unclear. Because you may have heard there's a gag. And then I was trying to talk to Esty for just a second.
Esty is a friend, is Karen Read's best friend.
Yes, and so she's kind of in that inner circle. But I caught her at a time in which a friend of the support group had just talked to her, and she was actually very emotional and wasn't really able to chat with me much because she was so emotional about this woman who has been so supportive and, in her opinion, not getting really a lot of credit for the support she provides. So didn't get any real detail from her. Bad time, as they say. So not officially hearing why they kicked them loose. Did somebody check, or did the jury offer that we're not doing anything today?
Interesting. I think Richard Gabriel's on. We have to tell him. But everyone loves you, Jill. Everyone is like having a great time that you're on a legal show.
You may not have enough room for all of us.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Gotcha. You know, we've done this. We've been doing this. We're pretty good at it now. Richard Gabriel is my friend, my jury consultant. Richard Gabriel has donated a lot of time when we did the Tennessee case for the Innocence Project they went to the U.S. Supreme Court and came back. And then he did the jury verdict sheet for my Tennessee counsel and I. And as I always say when I introduce him, it had the best question because it asked the people in Maynardville, Tennessee, in case you've heard of it, a big hot spot. What do you think of defense lawyers? And it was all misspelled, but the answer said they're doing the best they can for the person we're going to convict anyway. But it was all misspelled, but it was perfect because it explains exactly what you want to find out from a juror about whether they have bias before they get on. So Richard Gabriel, the best jury consultant in the world, according to me, and his team, which can include Michelle Ward when he's there. Richard, meet Jill Zarin, one of the original gangstas, as I'm going to call it, from the Real Housewives of New York City, which really means New York, because New York City is New York. It's the best. And welcome back, Richard.
Richard, good to see you again.
Good to see you guys too. Exciting.
Yeah. So as a great jury consultant, first of all, we want to know what you think of today, and then Jill has questions for you won't believe.
Always like those. So yeah, today, I mean, both of them dug in and did what they did. As we know, I mean, Hank Brennan's a good lawyer. He really is. And
Whether you like him or not.
Well,
whether you like him or not.
You know what? A good lawyer to me is someone who can get through to me to make sure I pay attention to everything you're saying, right? If you're a good lawyer, you want to make sure as a juror, I'm listening to you.
Right.
And I think he made two mistakes. One is he got very aggressive and abusive with some of the witnesses. And that to me as a juror, I find offensive because I see these people as doing their civic duty and coming in. Some of them get paid, some of them don't, but nobody comes in to be abused and belittled and made fun of, or, you know, makes it look like a moron, like what you were saying. Is it Hellman's Bay or is it this? Like, I want to get to the end, which is the person guilty or not guilty? So don't clog my brain up, which has been here for 30 days, with fighting with someone and nitpicking someone. It like, I find that annoying, and I don't think that makes a good lawyer. I think you want to have the jurors like you, because if the jurors like you, they trust you. So if you're telling them something, you believe them. But if you piss me off and I think you're a moron and a jerk, I want to find you. If you're the defense lawyer, I want to find your guy guilty because you're annoying me. Just my opinion.
Richard, I love it. Go ahead, Richard. Go.
Well, Jill, you would be a good defense juror. You would be an excellent defense juror in a case like this. And like a lot of people, they do. It depends which way you're leaning anyways. You know, jury selection is about how people already feel about a highly publicized case like this. So, I mean, that's one of the issues that I think Hank actually was dealing with initially, which is, you know, people have heard about this case. They've seen about this case. They come in preloaded with a lot of opinions about this case. And as we know about confirmation bias, people always want to gather evidence to support what they already believe. So that's where the critical part of jury selection is really whether they found people who truly were open-minded or whether people had already made up their minds originally. So, you know, that's sort of where I think the rubber meets the road with where these jurors are at. Obviously, the real thing that's happening right now as we're talking is those jurors are really, the dynamics of deliberation are playing out. How do they feel about each other? How do they feel about, do they get along with each other? Obviously, prosecution needs a unanimous jury on here. So any dissent like they had last time is a big problem for them. If people come preloaded with, again, a lot of problems with the case, then, you know, obviously prosecution is going to have a huge uphill battle here. And as you saw with Alan Jackson in his closing, he hit things very hard. Alan Jackson is a great lawyer, and he made some obviously points that, funny enough, go back to what we experienced in the OJ case, which is when we were finishing up OJ Simpson, we did a focus group which said, should Johnny Cochran in his closing argument,
Which trial? Which trial?
The first trial.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, the first murder trial. We asked jurors in a focus group, do you want Johnny to basically talk about this widespread conspiracy, or do you want it to be more of a localized cover-up of of our lead investigators, Van Adder and Lang and all those guys and stuff, and Furman and stuff? And they said, no, we want, it's really the contaminated examination, the contaminated investigation, which Alan Jackson used here. So you can't trust the investigation, you can't trust the evidence. That's really the theme that he brought to this. And that obviously is what he's hoping to create reasonable doubt here. And so I think he did a very good job trying to do this. And as you saw, you know, they said they weren't going to go for this sort of widespread conspiracy. There was motions about that and stuff. And to a certain extent, that's a very smart strategy, because it's hard to sell that an entire department's in on it and stuff. So
I agree with you, because, you know, especially since it's been 3 years, it's hard to believe that nobody would have broken, told a girlfriend, told a friend, something would have leaked where one of them would have broken, because, you know, if there was a conspiracy, you have to think somebody would break, that somebody would, you know, eventually break. 3 years is a long time to hold a secret. So if you start to go down the road, I would say,
I'm sorry, Richard, I got a question for you. And Jill,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think maybe from your background, loose lips might be more common than in the potential conspiracy in this case. But I do agree with you, Jill, on one point, and that is Hank Brennan, no matter what he does, if he makes a good point, the assholery effect makes it even less likely you're going to, like the guy or believe the guy. Richard, here's my question for you. Are you surprised? What do you make of still having all 18 jurors at the end of this trial, 6 alts all in place?
Well, again, this thing is such a big case. It's been around for such a long time. People are really motivated. Jurors are really motivated to stick with it. Aside from some extreme,
the alternates, because they stayed for 30 days. They had to get up early in the morning. They had to give up their lives, and they don't even get to give their opinion.
Yeah, so everybody is hoping to participate. Everybody wants to be able to tell the story at the end of this case about how they sat through the entire trial there. Whether that's because they say, I want to be here to convict, or whether they say, I want to be here because I really have an agenda to acquit Karen Read, that's another thing. I mean, we are always looking at the motivation of jurors in terms of sticking with it. Typically jurors want to look for any excuse to get out of jury duty. But in this case, there's a lot of motivation, whether to stick with it, at least just for the story.
Let me just say something to all of you may not know out there.
And
Richard has an experience with Alan Jackson, because Richard was my jury consultant, and Phil Spector, where Alan Jackson for 6 months was our adversary, and we fought very hard in court, and then ended up, having this mutual respect for each other, as Richard knows. But so, Richard, Alan Jackson from the other side. Tell me what you saw differently in the years that's passed that he's now switched to the defense side.
The only difference is that he switched sides. I mean, he's still a very, very aggressive, very, very good attorney. I mean, look, the challenge for a lot of prosecutors, or it's not for prosecutors, is that in a case like this, typically, a lot of prosecutors are dealing with public defenders that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And so as a result, there's a lot of camaraderie. There's plea agreements that happen. And as a result, public defenders tend to be very shy about being very aggressive. So a vast majority of the cases that prosecutors do, they're not dealing with people who come at them with both fists, with guns and knives, and ready to really do battle. And so Alan is not shy at all, as we saw in Spector, about that. In fact, there's obviously some real questions about some of the tactics he used pre-trial, about whether he's really doing these PR campaigns to really try and influence the jury pool, and sometimes the ethics of that. So there's a lot of things. When he takes it so seriously to say, I'm an advocate for my client, and he goes full bore on that.
I also think of this also, that the juror, even though the judge is supposed to be impartial, common sense tells me that the judge and the prosecutor are kind of on one side, and the defense is on the other. So it kind of evens it out if he did a PR campaign. Especially in this case, I think Bev proves my point, as she's going like this. So he goes, I object. Did you see that one?
Jill cannot get over the signaling conspiracy. I know.
It's not a conspiracy. You have to be blind. She goes like this. He goes, I object. She's like, come back to my office. Let's have coffee. I mean, she interrupted the whole line of questioning.
So Richard, you said on his own, what Jill's saying, how do you get over? Because we've had that, right? Where the judge is so biased, they're biased against you, but they normally are biased in a way that is not so clear. This was a little over the top in my view, but how did take her out of the equation? I've been saying to everybody that Hank Brennan, despite what you dislike him, is a good lawyer, but I thought he did some snaky, sleazy things in this trial.
The sweatshirt with the holes in it, really? He didn't know? And he just put it into evidence. It wasn't in evidence.
We're talking about the shirt. Yeah, I don't know if you saw the shirt, debacle.
Yeah, I didn't see that piece of it. But the truth is, yes. I mean, look, the truth is that at this point, jurors, whatever they think of the prosecutors or the defense thing, they're, for the most part, they understand both sides are trying to play the game. They understand both sides of that. That's what they're going back there. They're kind of dismissing that, whether they like Alan Jackson or whether they like Hank Brennan or not, it kind of becomes irrelevant at some point, because they really, to a certain extent, go, okay, what's our job? We've been here for 30 days on this case. We have a lot of evidence. They do, and this is, I truly believe, jurors do a really good job of kind of focusing on what happened here. Does the forensic evidence support that he was hit by the car? You know, what do they think of the witness statements about her saying, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him? All those things really are what they talk about.
Richard, what I'm trying to say is that when Hank goes down these, or any prosecutor or defense attorney goes down these paths and makes it personal and gets into trying to catch them in a ridiculous lie, because if they lie about the fact that they didn't know it was Hellman's, then they're lying about this, then I'm not really paying attention to your point. And then when we go back in the jury room, I can't even fight for you because you lost my attention because you were focused on bullshit and got me pissed off that I'm not even listening to you anymore. So
Well,
they really just hurt themselves.
But Jill, you are keyed into personality, and some jurors, you're right, maybe that may affect them. The personality of the lawyers may be it. They may be keyed in on, I like him or I don't like him, and therefore his case either rises or falls on based on whether I like him or not. Jurors, for the most part, though, understand that both sides are going to be incredibly aggressive, that they're both sides going to be focusing on stuff, and sometimes they kind of go, that's their job, is to try and impugn credibility.
I'm not saying that what I'm saying is it doesn't rise and fall on whether I like him or not. I'm not that immature or blind to that. What I'm saying is that I'm going to miss content because of the way your lawyer behaved. The way the prosecutor behaved means he just made a disservice to himself, because when you act like that, you turn me off, not to hurt your client if it's the prosecutor, if it's the state, but I'm not listening to you making your point, which is important, right? Your point is important. You're trying to tell me something to help me convict your side or not convict your side. Because of your behavior, I'm not listening.
So this is the interesting part, Jill, and Linda knows this because this is what we've dealt with in Spectre all the time. One of our big themes in Spectre was, is it story or is it science? And for the most part, people like you are really keyed into the story element. Who are these people? What are their motivation? Do I like? Do I not like? Does it turn me off? Does it, am I listening? Those are people who are much more keyed in as jurors to really the personalities and the motivation and the characters involved here. There are some people, though, that are much more focused on what's the actual evidence, what's the forensics, what are those types of things. And that's really, that's a jury selection issue here. Because I think in terms of the story elements here, it depends on whether it can aid both sides, whether you think, oh, she's a conniving person who hit him and just trying to get off and stuff like that. That's her story. Or if it's just this, obviously the story, I think in this case, the personality issues tends to favor the defense because you have the lead investigator that's going after her. And again, the whole tainting of the investigation stuff. If you're conspiracy minded, of course, you're going to favor the defense in this case. So it depends on where a juror focuses, what they get caught up on, whether they did, and ultimately.
Do you know about this jury? I came into this whole case very late in the game. Do you know how many men, how many women, or anything about them at this point, or you don't find out till after?
I don't actually. It's very funny. I look for a lot of information about the jurors. I think early on there's a majority of men on the jury, but I don't remember the exact composition of this.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing, and we see the judge wouldn't let us have a lot of information on the jury, if you recall. She had this gag, and so today when she drew the numbers, we don't know, and we'll find out because we looked at because people in the courtroom. It's the stupidest thing because people in the courtroom know how many men, and Aidan Carney tweeted right away that the juror in the number 1 seat was a black middle-aged male who took no notes. I was explaining to people, Richard, that it doesn't matter whether they take notes because sometimes they have agreements as who's going to take notes and who's not going to take notes.
Can you explain to me the picking of every state is different? Can you tell me how many jurors there are, how many alternates? And I thought that the first, when you pick the jurors 1 through 12 are it, and then there's the alts. You're telling me they mix them all in one pool and now they're pulling out the jury?
Yeah, that's what they did here.
So what happens sometimes, Jill?
Is that always?
No.
or this case, and how she decides that?
Some judges do it differently. One of the reasons in longer cases, sometimes judges do it like this is because everybody thinks they could be a potential juror. So it sort of says all 18, if you're an alternate, you kind of sit back and kind of go, okay, maybe I'm not going to test. You may not pay as much attention. But in a case like this, the judge says you're all there. And then at the very end, everybody thinks they could potentially be a juror, keeps everybody's attention. And then they randomize, okay, these people are then the alternates.
Is it picked out of a hat, or she says it's picked out of a hat? Like,
well, we saw it. This time we saw it. Last time it was a little more clandestine, but this time there was balls in the old tumbler.
Oh, like
B25, bingo, or whatever, whatever the numbers were, they pulled out, and the 6 they pulled out became the alternates.
So when they came in every day, because in the jury that I sat on, I don't remember what I was, but if I was 5, I sat in the 5th seat every day. How did they sit every day? Do you know, Michael? Because you're there.
How do they sit? Meaning what, in the box?
In the jury box. Are they always in the same seat, or did they move?
They rose except one juror got moved because he was talking to other jurors too much.
Yeah.
The guy was talking to 2 young women apparently, and so they moved him in the middle.
But generally,
Richard, have you ever seen that?
And I've not been in this courtroom, but generally, it's human nature. You sit in a chair, unless you have some reason to move. People like to go back, and that becomes their spot. So other than what Linda suggested, where they had to move somebody, you can count on them pretty much taking their normal spot every day.
And how do they pick the foreman of the jury?
Judge does that. The judge does that.
Arbitrarily?
Every jurisdiction is very different, but that's how they do it here.
So so don't you think that's a little biased in itself?
Well, it can be. I think in this case, because of what happened the last time, and it just so happened to be a very advocate-like juror that she picked, people started to wonder, oh, she's picking somebody that's going to follow what she wants as the outcome. I haven't heard that yet with the African-American, 40-ish aged guy that has now been chosen for this jury. So it
ended up being, I think it was equal, 8, 9, and 9. Now it's 7 men, 5 women. Richard, on this case, who would you think would have been the ideal juror, male or female, or does it matter?
I don't think demographics matters in this case. The truth is that we take a look at gender, especially in terms of how's that going to play out. I think that to a certain extent, men tend to be protective of women. I think men it's harder to typically convict women defendants in general. I mean, it's funny. There's some of the statistics are pretty alarming, actually, when you take a look at especially death penalty cases, because it's significantly higher in a death penalty case that a person, if you're male, you're going to get convicted than if you're female. So there's that tend to be protective thing sometimes with men over women, and that's what we find in a lot of these cases. So maybe that might be a little bit of an advantage and having a majority of men. But again, it's really more about the personalities and whether they're focused on sort of the forensics of the case and really what that shows, or whether people are really caught up in this story of this beleaguered relationship.
Let me ask you another question. Why do you think a juror could think Hank Brennan is a good lawyer? Let's from a jury consultant point of view.
Why would a juror think he's a good lawyer?
Yeah, right.
Well,
does it matter? I don't know what you're trying to get at, Linda. What do you mean? Does it matter?
I want to know because I said early on too that Hank Brennan is a very good lawyer. No matter what you think of him, he's a good. I don't like his sleazy activity, but they hired him to get a conviction. You hire, if you're a defense attorney, you hire him because you want to, you're Whitey Bulger, right? So what are the assets that he brought?
Well, I mean, one of the things that makes him a good lawyer is he's had a very successful career. He's had a lot of convictions when things. He also was Whitey Bulger's lawyer on the defense side. So he knows.
Didn't Whitey Bulger die in jail?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He did such a good job.
Yeah, he was going to prison no matter what. He was going.
Yeah,
He didn't win for Whitey.
Look, Alan Jackson's have defendants that have been convicted too. When you're a defense lawyer, you have people that get convicted. That's not the
He didn't have a great client, Whitey Bulger, who wants him out on the street. You don't really want to win for his lawyer.
So I mean, I think that there's a lot of jurors don't mind the overly aggressive, even obnoxious thing. For the most part,
Right. Remember, we thought that with people loved Alan. I guess it goes back to the whole confirmation bias. People think if they're for you, they love it when you're aggressive. That's what they're expecting. They're expecting because they want to think that if they hire you, that's how you'll represent them. I mean, that's my view.
Yeah, and people these days, people are very passionate these days. We live in very polarized times. So having somebody express some real intense conviction, whichever you may believe on this, is something that is gratifying for people. As you said, Jill, sometimes you just got to keep my attention in a trial. And sometimes if somebody's just trying to lay back and be very sort of more high road in the thing, sometimes it's just not as interesting.
Did you see any? Yeah, did you see any of the Lally, Jill? Because Lally tried the case last time. Talk about not keeping your attention.
Who?
Right?
With who?
Yeah,
Lally,
the former prosecutor
who was in the courtroom, did some of the examinations, like 2 minor examinations.
I have a question for you.
I mean,
how long is it going to take to get an answer? Yes, that's the question.
I missed the question.
to get a verdict.
What's your guess? Obviously nobody knows, but what's your educated guess?
So the two things that happen here is this. There are two types of deliberations typically with a jury. There's what we call evidence-driven deliberations or verdict-driven deliberations. And sometimes it depends on just what the foreman wants to do. So a foreman will sit down and go, okay, everybody, let's see where we're at. How many yeses, how many no's on this question? That's quicker. That's a faster thing because sometimes if everybody agrees, boy, they're done pretty quickly here. The evidence-driven deliberation, which is done sometimes by a foreman or a foreperson, is where there's like, okay, let's break it down. Let's kind of go through the evidence piece by piece to see where we stand. That can take a long time. The other thing that creates division here, hang on, Jill. The only thing that can take a little bit more time is if there's obviously conflict in the jury room, like there was last time. If people are really divided, then it's going to take a lot longer. Prosecutors need unanimous verdicts. So jury selection for them really is not just about, can I pick good jurors, but can I get jurors to get along? Because I need everybody to work together to come to conviction. Defense lawyers sometimes are like, I don't care if there's some crazy person on this jury, because sometimes that can throw the monkey in the works. And if we get another hung jury, then I might be able to get this case dismissed, or I might be able to get the charges reduced, or whatever it is. It's going to be much harder to try her for a third time.
Which they're talking about, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. They want in jury selection, prosecutors want people to get along so they can all, be friends, so to speak. And defense want conflict-driven jurors here. Interesting, very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm watching at the jurors, I'm during the trial, I'm trying to look at how they act with each other on the break. They look like they're all getting along. They look like there's camaraderie. Does it look like there's somebody who's kind of a little bit on the outs and stuff like that? That tells me a little bit about what the jury dynamic is. And that's really important as they start deliberating, is how do these people get along?
So Richard, this jury foreman, you don't know you're going to be a jury foreman, obviously, right? Who teaches you how to be a jury foreman? So you said that
Nobody.
You know what I'm saying is you said there's two kinds of way to start. Well, who's going to tell him that?
Well, in this case, it's important because the judge instructed them not to take a straw poll when they first got into the room, which I thought was odd.
Excuse me?
Did you ever hear that, Richard?
She said
I
we don't
hear that,
recommend.
no.
Yeah, she said I don't recommend that. And I've never heard that as part of the instructions.
Why is that her business? You see, again, with the jury bias.
Yeah, normally it's, whatever the jury personality is, that's what you do. But she's guided them.
Well,
Yeah.
that's another thing. Like, so first of all, I don't know, I guess straw poll is something, what that is. You it's an intuitive thing. But the evidence base, the way you worded it, I guess maybe it's intuitive to do that also in a jury room. But I mean, does the judge talk to the foreman for a few minutes and say, this is your responsibility. You're supposed to fill this out. You're supposed to turn it in. Like, how does he know what his job is? I don't know what to do if I was a jury foreperson.
So
I can imagine what might happen if Jill was the jury foreperson. I don't think there's any doubt about what would happen.
I think
so what happens? They had the break. So do they Monday? Since the judges told them yesterday not to take a straw vote, would they come in Monday and do take a straw vote to see where they're at, or what?
So I think it depends a little bit on what the conversations were today. Whether, I mean, what can reasonably happen here is, even if they don't take a straw poll, is I think they can say, okay, let's talk about the issues here. There's obviously major issues in the case that they can start kicking around. Then they sit over the weekend and they think about it, and they kind of know where everybody else is at on stuff. So I think at that point, either they come back in and again start deliberating on some of the issues here, or they say, okay, if it looks like from this initial conversation that people seem to be in agreement, whether it's on conviction or acquittal and stuff like that, I think you could see an early straw poll, probably not until Monday.
Well, I will tell you that I did an unscientific poll study on my Instagram account. I think I got about 2,000 people answer, and 81% was to acquit.
Yeah.
Have you guys done that on yours? Social media?
Well, I haven't done it on social media, but I think some of the polling prior to the trial was that I think it was less than that, but I still think about 2/3 of the people in the area thought she should be acquitted and stuff.
Do you think that they made a case better for acquittal so if you're saying at the beginning 2/3 thought she should be acquitted, do you think they did a better job during this trial to make more think acquittal or less? Do you know what I mean?
So the interesting thing about preconditioning, and this is something I really do believe, is that I'm a huge fan of juries and of juries, even where, like, and I'll give you a quick example. I worked on the Casey Anthony case, all right? And in the Casey Anthony case, 80% of all of Florida thought she was guilty and thought she should get the death penalty for the most part, all right? Despite that, when we picked the jury on that case, those jurors acquitted her of all the charges. So even despite sometimes really strong public opinion in one way or the other, jurors will take it real seriously, and they will break it down and can come back with a very unpopular opinion.
Do you think it had to do, obviously you helped pick juries. So what do you think you did on that jury that might have helped?
Well, so that was a little bit different case, and I think a lot of credit has to be given to Jose on that. I think a number of things happened in that case. So yes, we managed to weed out. It was a death penalty case. So for the most part, when you're picking death penalty juries, all you're trying to do is save your client's life. That's really what you're trying to do. You're just trying to find people who actually, because the death penalty case is already preloaded with guilt jurors. And so you're just trying to do that. So we, at least I think, managed to find people who were more equivocal, but still willing to give the death penalty, but not like, boom, you're convicted, you automatically get the death penalty. That always creates a little bit more of an open-mindedness there. And into that open-mindedness on those juries. And we had even like a lawyer's daughter on the thing there. So we had some smart jurors in the Casey Anthony case too. And I think the other thing is Jose was very good in that case. He was a great lawyer, and he really poked a lot of holes in the case.
And I think forensics counsel.
Yeah.
With fantastic co-counsel with Linda Kenny Bodden there, and all the advice that she gave. No, it's true. Linda helped so much with the forensic evidence in that case. And that was a huge deal with the Casey Anthony jurors. They were like, this, you can't tell. They had all this bogus scientific evidence that they put into that case, which the prosecutors used to try and convict Casey. Linda helped to actually debunk a lot of that. And Jose made a big deal out of that. And then I think, again, prosecutors overreached.
I remember her name. I don't really remember the case. Where is she now?
Casey Anthony?
She's in Florida.
She's in Florida.
She's just free and, okay. I don't really know much about it. Okay.
Yeah, she's trying to live an anonymous life down in Florida, which is.
Oh, she's near me, she would, because I don't really remember her.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is where public opinion sometimes is right on this, but jurors, what happens is afterwards is jurors get into that trial, they are sworn into an oath, and they really take that job seriously of analyzing that, analyzing the evidence, thinking about the law and stuff like that. And that's why, I mean, look, a lot of the jurors in the first trial thought she should have been acquitted. And some of it, and yet some of those jurors really said, no, I would convict her on some of these charges there. So it really, I think part of it does have to do with what they were preconditioned, whether they came in with an inclination or one way or the other. Because I think jurors also try to be aware of their own biases, especially in these high profile cases.
I just want to chime in on our poll, which I put out there Wednesday after the evidence ended, and we're 93% not guilty on all charges. So, maybe we're pandering, to an echo chamber, but I think the number from wherever it's being polled is exceptionally beyond majority.
No, I think that's right.
Question: why did the defense ask to put OUI on the jury slip? It was not on there previously. I don't think I thought they asked not to. I thought everyone didn't want lesser included. So I can't answer that, Michelle. I don't know the answer to your question.
Yeah, that's on that second charge, which to me, remember the first trial, that's what got literally hung, that second charge, because it's so convoluted with all the lesser includeds. It's a mess. It gives such a weird series of degrees of guilt and action and mental, and both mens rea and actus reus. I don't know if they just, close their eyes and pick one ultimately.
So Richard, tell us. Wait, when you had this convoluted jury sheet, well, I can't make sense of it.
I know,
Michael can't make sense of it. We were looking at it with Jill. Your thoughts on whether a jury just ends up compromising that, or they really go to the issue of is there a collision?
So, it really goes two ways. There are people who just kind of go, if they don't believe it, if they don't believe the case, they don't believe the case. I'm there. But the truth is that all jury deliberations, if you've got some people in there who really think she's guilty on stuff, this is where the lesser includeds get negotiated, whether they understand the language on that or not. So oftentimes what ends up happening. For a
second, those lesser included. So the prosecutor, they arrest her and they bring her up on charges of what? Second-degree murder, which I told you I objected to right away because I don't think anybody thought she would have done it on purpose, even if it happened. But they did it anyway. And what was the other charge? They did include manslaughter originally?
Manslaughter with the DUIs original, and then leaving the scene.
So they had those two, and then the judge is allowed to add more?
Well, lesser includeds are almost always added unless there's a good reason not to. So that's why they're in this particular case. So the judge felt they were appropriate.
Because she probably thinks that the prosecutor had a weak case?
Well, it screams compromise. If they get into, headlock
territory. Is that fair to the defendant? I mean, they came in with second-degree murder. So
it's not illegal. It's quite often an option for juries. And as a defense attorney, you hate it. You'd really rather have an all or nothing, because when things get jammed up, it's easy to say, okay, fine. I won't go with this, but I'll go with this lesser one. Just fine. It happens, human nature.
And Linda, you were going to find out what the time she would serve if she was convicted of any of those.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up over the weekend. I don't know it offhand about what the penalties are for each of those. And all. I was just looking at no collision, and to me the prosecution didn't prove it, and just have text data which says there's text data, but it doesn't show collision because it can't show collision. To me, that's just.
And the prosecutor's witness said he couldn't 100% say collision.
Yeah.
And the fact that they didn't rope off the area with tape or anything, or look for any evidence of anything, kind of says that everybody on the scene of the crime also didn't think there was something nefarious.
Here's something that happens sometimes in deliberations, which is unfortunate for the defense. And it may not happen here, but one of the things that does happen, and we've seen it in a lot of trials, is that ultimately juries sometimes don't go by just what the verdict form is. It's they're like, which version do I more likely believe? It becomes a preponderance standard, not a beyond a reasonable doubt standard. As a matter of fact, when I was working on Phil Spector's second trial, which he got convicted, when we talked to jurors afterwards, jurors went, well, it just seemed more likely that the prosecution's explanation of what happened was the better explanation here. So that's sometimes what ends up happening, because ultimately, Jill, ultimately, all you guys, it's about the story. This is ultimately what happens in the liberation room, is they're going to have to put together a group consensus of what they think happened that night. And whatever that story is will lead them either to a conviction or an acquittal. There. And so that's really
I think based on the evidence, I think based on the evidence, even the prosecutor doesn't know what happened that night.
Yeah, that's my argument.
And if you don't know what happened, that
what the hell happened? That's the reasonable doubt. But it's
So
Richard,
but Michael,
you see that.
yeah,
You know,
well,
that you
then
see
Rich-
people actually reduce the burden to come to a conclusion.
So Michael, with that question with you, just to Richard, are they gonna, if everyone said they don't know what happened, will they make up a story, Richard, or what? If they're gonna,
yes,
they will.
yes,
Oh,
they
boy.
will. I
Wow.
mean, the truth is that, look, we work in the law all the time. We hear about this sort of reasonable doubt. We hear about if they didn't prove it, then they didn't make their case and stuff. The truth is, with this much investment that jurors have in this case, they want to know what happened. That is just a natural human inclination.
And all we do is look at her the whole time and know that she's the only one in the room who knows what happened.
She's the only one.
I don't
And
know that she knows what happened. How does she know?
She knows if she did it or not. Like,
true.
she knows if she did it or
That's
not.
true. But if
That's
she
my
did
point.
not, Jill, if she did not, then how does she know what happened?
True, but she knows more than we would. And you weren't here for
I'll
this.
give you that.
But
I'll give you that.
I think there was something going on in the house, like with the kid and the drugs and everything, and that's why they didn't want to let him in.
And again, Richard, the key is the jury needs to know that's not their job. Their job is not to be creative writing the story. You
Right.
know,
That's true.
Well, but Michael, the problem is in a vacuum. You're talking to people here.
Oh, I know.
You're not
I
talking
get
to
it.
lawyers and stuff. And so, yes, that's not their job, but yes, for them to resolve conflicts in the jury room, to answer questions that they may have, they sometimes do create a story. I hear it all the time when we're doing mock trials and focus groups, when we're doing post-trial interviews. Jurors all the time are saying things like, here's what I think happened. And that's because uncertainty is very uncomfortable, especially when you have this length of time and this kind of commitment, and a man is dead as a result of it.
Yeah, no, I get it. And it's up to the attorneys to try and pound that into them. But in the end, in that room, who knows? Hey,
I don't know.
Madeira Beach
let me
caregiver.
let me give a call to Madeira Beach. Is in Moscow, Russia. She's a hospice nurse, and she is one of our big followers, and she loves Michael. I'm tired and cranky. Are there a lot of rules to go over at the beginning of deliberations that takes a lot of time? Otherwise, couldn't the foreman start out by saying, raise your hand if you think there's a collision? I'm throwing that to you, Richard.
Yes, absolutely. A foreman has pretty wide range of what they can do in here. And even though the judges said you shouldn't convict on the issues itself, a foreperson absolutely could go around and go, okay, who thinks there was a collision? Who thinks that whether she knew it or not? And he could go issue by issue. Who thinks she actually said, I hit him, I hit him.
Yeah, that's a great question Madeira Beach has come up with, because it's not how would you vote. It's a very specific issue that will ultimately get them to a decision. But that's how things get resolved, is that kind of discussion, right? Because some people might have a reason for voting one way or the other, and they haven't thought it through. Well, why? Well, I'm not sure there's a collision. Well, then how do you get there, right? So that's a great question.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions you have for Richard, Jill? Because this is the man. You heard him. He's
nice to meet you. No, I'm a frustrated lawyer. I should have been a lawyer.
Her whole family are lawyers, by the way, but just like you. Richard's mother was a lawyer. It's still alive. I shouldn't say what. Her whole family are lawyers too. So she said she's a frustrated lawyer on this case. But Jill's point is she would still vote because she thinks that we don't know what happened. That she'd vote not guilty, even though she thinks there may have been a collision.
I'm not 100% sure she didn't hit him. I'm not.
No, I don't know either. I have no idea.
I'm not 100% sure. Like, I'm not on the absolutely she didn't do it theory. I'm on the they didn't prove their case theory.
Yeah, exactly.
But to me, it's all about they have to prove it. And that's what I loved about Alan's defense, is that instead of trying to like have this conspiracy of, if the car didn't hit him, this is what happened. He went in the house and he did this and he did that. Stop trying to prove all that stuff. It's too much for the jury. Did the car hit him or not? That's it.
Yeah, but that was a major change.
It was a major change, but he introduced it also. I mean, he created the thread there that jurors could pull on if they wanted to go with, here's what I think did happen, or here's an alternate theory. And from a defense perspective, you're always looking for a jury to kind of go, yeah, there's some other explanation for what happened.
No, but what he's doing is he's focusing, like he said in the first 3 words of his summation, which is collision, 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 rather than, he went in the house and the glass came from the kitchen and he didn't have a shoe, he left it in the house and the dog bit him, like, and this and that. That's like keep it on the car. And then if you believe the car didn't hit him, this is what happened. Like, there is he did die, right? We all know he died.
Right.
We all know he died. We don't know how he died. And in fact, the coroner's not 100% sure how he died. And
the coroner's 100% sure how he died, the fracture of the skull, but doesn't know what the circumstances.
The fall caused the fracture in the skull, right? What caused the fall, right? Was he dragged out of the house? Was he hit by a car? Did he drop dead of a heart attack? But the time of death wasn't 100%, and there's a lot of questions. Too many questions, not enough answers, and evidence that doesn't match up. The tail light, it was intact when it got to the garage, but then mysteriously it wasn't intact. They have a glass on the floor, but it doesn't match the glass that is in the car. Did it match his nose? I don't even know. So there's like all these too many questions.
I think if Jill were on the jury, Richard, you have your defense juror, even if she may have thought there may have been a hit. So I think we have the answer to that question. How would you vote if you're on the jury? I assume you'd vote not guilty because you don't think the prosecution proved it, right?
That's what Alan wants. Alan wants them to say, you have to, and that's what he said in his summation. They have to prove that she did it. I don't have to prove she didn't. Do you think that the fact that she didn't get on the stand to testify hurt her?
No, and I'll tell you why. And these guys know it very, very clearly. When you are a defense lawyer, you don't want your defendant to be the focus of the case.
That's it.
You want the prosecution to be the focus of the case.
My next question: Do you think she should have spoken and done these interviews and documentaries or not?
No.
Do you think she asked a lawyer or told a lawyer she was going to do them and didn't give a shit and did it anyway?
Yeah, I think she was more careful than some, but you obviously saw Hank Brennan use some of those words in the interviews and stuff. So it's always problematic.
But if she didn't do the documentary, I don't think she would have gotten so many people interested. And I don't think she would have been able to raise all that money that she did for her defense and this whole, pro Karen Reed thing. I think that probably came from the documentary. I'm assuming some of it.
Well,
it didn't hurt. I mean, she had a massive following before that was released, so it definitely probably grew the following and cemented those that believed. Because I like to think I was objective when I watched it. I don't think it came down overwhelmingly for or against her.
I agree with you. I do agree with you. I don't think it was one way or the other. My next question is, so whose book is coming out first? Her book, the lawyer's book, or the jury's book? And
I bet on jurors. Yeah.
Jurors' books. And how many do you think there'll be?
Oh my gosh. I would say more than one. That's all.
What's the most that's ever come from a jury that you know of as far as books and people talking about the case? OJ, did his jurors write it?
Yeah, his jurors, and OJ had the most books, period, just because everybody wrote a book about that damn trial.
I didn't realize that, really. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's not not the jurors themselves. There were only, I think, 2 or 3 jurors in OJ that wrote books. And partly because the Madam Foreperson had 3 jurors that contributed to that one book. But, obviously every lawyer affiliated with that case wrote a book about the case.
So did Judith Regan.
Well, everybody wrote a book.
No, a friend of mine. No. She had a whole she had a whole show that she filmed with OJ, and the book was I Did It, or I Said I Did It. Anyway,
If I did it.
If I did it.
If I did it.
He says she's a friend of mine. She said he did it. And she had it all, and she had the interview, and Fox made her kill it, and the books got burned because the family sued or threatened to sue the Goldman family, so they had to burn the books or something like that. Anyway, crazy. That was crazy. He did it. But anyway, another story, another day. He said he did it. He's not saying he did it. He said he did it.
Well, I always said, and he did his last interview ever with me, and I said he's the nicest killer I ever met. So
nobody says they're bad guys.
So, Richard, any predictions on how long this jury will be out? Read the tea leaves.
I don't think that, obviously, I don't think they're going to be back today. I think I would say it's hard to read tea leaves. I'd say, I would say either Tuesday or Wednesday is probably a good estimate right now.
Interesting.
That allows them to go through the evidence and to solidify whatever the factions are. Obviously, the thing that determines it is whether two things. One is either if they're just incredibly detailed, because I have seen juries that really want to go over every little piece. They want to hear all the testimony. They want to see all the evidence again. And that obviously prolongs this thing. Or if there's divisions, and that can take longer too.
Do you think
if they're a quicker case, if they come back Monday, does that mean a guilty or not guilty generally?
I would think more of an acquittal.
Not guilty. Yeah. Not guilty is a lot easier to say. The guilty, you have to go through it all and all and all and all. Do you think they should have been sequestered?
It's the horse is out of the barn on this. It's like, there's so much been out there even prior to this trial, that sequestering the jury.
Do you think they should have been serving the next this weekend and deliberating tomorrow and Sunday to get this over with?
Not necessarily. I mean, the truth is they've invested a lot of time on this thing. I think, and so getting it over with really shouldn't be an option for the jury. It needs to take as long as it takes.
No, I know. To me, it's like we started at 2:00 today. We just started, and now I've got to wait till Monday. Like,
sometimes jurors
work on this.
Jill's hardcore. I want sequestration. I want weekends. Come on, let's get this. Let's go.
I want focus. This is my life. I mean, that's what I want.
No, I mean, I don't think that they should sequester them. I don't think that they should force them to deliberate. Sometimes jurors ask that themselves because they actually are getting somewhere on things. But I don't think, I just don't think that, it's fine to be able to go, hey, we're going to spend a few hours. We'll think about it over the weekend and come back and talk on Monday.
Well, poor Karen Reed, right? Poor Karen.
Depends on whether they acquit her or not, I think.
It's almost like one way. If I was her, it's like, I want to know if I'm going or I'm not going. It's this in-between thing that's got to be very hard for her every night. She doesn't know where she's sleeping. Like today, she woke up and said, am I coming home tonight? Like if she was guilty, it's 4:00. Can you tell me, are they going to handcuff her and take her away? Or do they give her bail until sentencing?
We've talked about that. I'm guessing custody. That's my guess. Depending on whatever the conviction might be. If it's on the lesser charge, maybe not. But I think more likely than not, they'll revoke bail and take.
I feel for her. I feel for anyone. You know what I mean? Like that's a tough. It's tough.
Yeah, no, the whole thing is tough. But Richard, you are the man. You explain everything to us. We're going to have to get in another time as to Hank Brennan. And I thought it was interesting. One of the things that we didn't talk about, because I know we have to go in about 4 minutes, was the issue of the fact that Hank Brennan had used Dr. Loposada, had hired her twice, and the Commonwealth had hired her in the Turk case where they got a conviction 2 weeks ago. So they both had an investment in her. And I was wondering whether you think that Hank Brennan's cross-examination then was less on her because of that. Just your final thoughts on that issue.
Who was she? Can you just tell me who she was again?
Dr. Loposada, she was defense medical examiner, defense forensic pathologist.
If he was easier on her, I would imagine. Look, it's all relationships. We all have relationships in here. So if he was a little softer on her, and because he's used her in the past, and he may want to use her in the future, he's a defense lawyer now and things. So he may need her in the future and stuff. So, and obviously there's strategic calls too about whether, do you think, do I need to go after her that hard? So there's a lot of sort of on the ground decisions on that, but the relationship clearly could have made a difference.
I mean, if they were concerned, they could have had Lally cross-examine her, but obviously they felt it was more important, even with that baggage, that Brennan cross-examine her. So,
yeah.
Richard, thank you for your time.
Richard, great job. You stood up to Jill's withering examination as well. So, glad you could join us.
I've been working with lawyers for 40 years, so I should have a thick skin by now.
And Jill, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
So much, guys.
It's been a fun. I have to say, it's been the most fun 2-hour panel I've ever had in covering this case, because it not only was it entertaining, but it really showed some real world stuff. And I think hopefully all the viewers that are watching got some real world knowledge. So we're gonna cut you both loose.
All right. Thanks, guys.
You again.
You guys have a great weekend, and let me know if you want when this whole thing wraps up.
We'll talk Monday, perhaps.
Take care, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Touch.
Take care.
Richard, love you, buddy.